Next, we are going to be a little bit less scientific and more economic. It's Keith Arnold from the Corpus Christi Visitors and Convention Visitors Bureau, sorry. And I had a piece of paper, but I don't know what I did with it. So, Keith, and appreciate you coming. You're going to get, no, there's no, he's going to read it out. Thank you.
Good afternoon to those of you who aren't from Corpus Christi, North Padre Island area. Welcome. We're glad you're here visiting with us. I have a. How many of you are in the tourism business? Good. At least there's a few people that are more or less in it or involved at some level. You know, we find ourselves in a real challenging environment, pun intended, related to dealing with natural things. What I find is that in the world of nature and economics, there's an ongoing tendency to simplify and overstate the case for either side in the face of controversy. We get divided that way very often. If the perception of an economically driven issue is that it threatens the environment, the high likelihood is there will be a major outcry to stop the entire program or project because of the perceived threat. If a business project or program is stymied by a perceived environmental obstacle, the business development community frequently tries to ignore or buy out the eco-community or in the interest of moving the development ahead. And so we find ourselves very, very often at opposite ends of the scale, and what I'd like to talk a little bit with you today about is balance. Because each of these positions that I just referred to leads to further division between environmental and economic development interests, and ignoring of the fact that each needs the other to protect the respective position. Natural and environmental protection cannot survive and thrive without millions of dollars of private and corporate investment, no matter what we say. And economic development cannot survive and thrive without sustainable natural resources for projects and programs. Bottom line. The apparent chasm between natural resource protection and economic development becomes even wider when an established community revenue source feels threatened by a call for restricting its primary resource for generating jobs, revenue, and quality of life. In populations that are as dependent as Corpus Christi is on tourism in North Padre Island, Galveston, and South Padre Island, restricting access to clean beaches is a definite threat to the industry that ranks beach travel as its number one reason that tourists visit and spend their hard-earned dollars in our areas. In fact, Corpus Christi spends more than $1 million a year from its hotel occupancy tax collections to clean and maintain beaches. Why? Well, economically it's this way. Because according to Dr. Jim Lee at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, over 7 million visitors come to Corpus Christi, North Padre Island annually, generating about $900 million in direct revenue, and $700 million in direct revenue and about $1 billion in direct and indirect input to our economy. These tourists also directly and indirectly influence 19,000 jobs and account for about 10% of our area's economy on an annual basis. A major challenge is that this fact is not related to a new and untested economic development event, but rather to an existing and growing part of our economy on which families already and businesses depend for livelihoods right at this present time. Obviously, the sargassum cleaning issue, or what to do with sargassum in general, runs right through all coastal communities. Primarily why? It's very obvious. The peak season for tourism is in fact the peak season for sargassum to clog up the water close to our shoreline, wash up and create high racks of algae on our beaches, and to create a vision of poor beach maintenance in the eyes of the tourists, with litter caught in the racks very often too. This may sound extremely negative when I lay it out to you that way, but two arguments which I found from the environmental community, of which I'm aware, call for limiting or in some cases halting the current method of beach cleaning to remove the sargassum racks, period. End of statement. The first concern, basically, that I see is that raking the beach, which is the common practice for removing sargassum, causes erosion. The second primary concern is that moving the sargassum back to the dunes is harmful to bird life potentially, because it's not laying on the beach, and other types of fauna, and of no benefit to the dune structure, if not harmful in some way to that structure. This is my read of it. At the same time, there are a couple of studies done by Amy Williams and Rusty Fagan of the Department of Ecosystem Science and Management at Texas A&M University College Station that were completed in 2006 on Galveston Island that deals with both concerns. So I provide for your consideration the executive summaries, and John, I'll leave with you the studies along with the economic impact study. One of these entitled Environmental Impacts of Beach Raking of Sargassum on Galveston Island, and the other entitled The Enhancement of Panicum amarum Plant Growth by Sargassum of Brown Algae. That is tough to say if you're not a scientist, so I'm sorry about that. While both studies warrant further study, there's no question they're not complete. The initial findings were that over a one-year period, and I do put in parentheses and in italics that it is a one-year period, a study of elevation changes on raked and unraked beaches on both the west and east end of Galveston Island indicated there's not a statistical difference in elevation changes between the raked and unraked beaches. Further, the study of avian, and we're very interested in birds here, so I highlight that, showed a larger dependence on fresh influxes of sargassum rather than on the older deposits of sargassum at the high tide line. The second study concluded that sargassum subsidies enhance the growth of the dune plant, Panicum amarum. My Latin is probably not as good as it should be either. The significant change of total vegetative length between the treatments with large amounts and small amounts of sargassum indicates that the more sargassum that is placed on the vegetation, the more growth that will occur. Obviously, many of you are much more familiar with this plant than I am, but I know that it's integral to the growth and the sustaining of dunes. In addition, the study noticed that plant growth was the same with sargassum that had sand mixed in it from raking that was placed in the dunes as that sargassum without it in it. And this study was funded in part by a grant from NOAA and a cooperative agreement with the Texas General Land Office. Now, you're probably saying, I'm trying to make a case one way or another, and I ask you, do these two studies individually or collectively close the case on looking at better ways to clean beaches or to restrict beach cleaning? No, not at all. They definitely do not. In fact, my question is, why isn't there more comprehensive research being done to find better ways to do this? As I went through and tried to locate research, and there's a bunch of footnotes in their research, it just seems fairly minimal. Clearly, no economic engine wants to threaten its fuel for driving ahead. And our tourism interests want to help ensure the preservation of our beaches because that's what drives people to us, as well as to maintain them at the same time. That is a clear goal that we should have together. At the same time, if sargassum has use in other parts of the world for food and fertilizer, etc., I can't understand why we don't exploit that and find a competition for better harvesting that is more efficient and environmentally effective by commercial interests. No one on the tourism side is saying that sargassum on every foot of our beaches should be raked clean, but it is abundantly clear to us, those of us in the industry who receive significant feedback, that stacked racks of sargassum everywhere that smell and sometimes trap hazardous waterborne litter in them is not acceptable to the tourists we work so hard to bring to our region. What's the right formula for cleaned and unclean beaches? In my estimation, that's the basis for future research and ongoing dialogue between environmental and economic interests in our state regarding the conditions of our beaches. On a practical note, I find the sargassum issue interesting and timely, but I have to say that I feel it's a little bit dwarfed as an issue for us by the overall litter issue on our beaches, and frankly, the environmental impact of driving on our beaches. Those are other subjects that should be discussed at the same level, at least, as sargassum. It's certainly my hope, and the hope of those of us in the tourism side of the economic development quotient, that we can find an essential balance that will create a synergy between economics and environment and tourism. Clearly, our new Coastal Bend Nature Tourism Initiative is that type of situation. And when we talk about the people we want to bring here to visit, we say one of the reasons we want to bring them to visit is they come predisposed to preserve what we have naturally because that's what they value. And a lot of that has to do with us working together to make sure that people understand what sargassum is and why it's there, and finding ways to keep as many parties happy as possible without really disrupting the environment. The ability to effectively manage sargassum while caring for the coastal environment and wildlife habitat has to be balanced with the economic realities of a dependence that coastal communities have on tourists that expect clean beaches. We are really delighted that the organizers of the Sargassum Symposium have created this forum for dialogue between parties so affected by this issue. And with that, I want to say thank you and hope you'll take that into consideration. That's really what it is a chance to think about how people are affected directly by both sides of this issue. Thanks for your time. John, the studies and the economic impact pieces and all are right here.
You missed Amy when she was here. She already presented this morning.
Did she?
Yeah.
Did she present my speech?
Yeah.
No. I
No,
doubt it.
as any good academic, she said this needs more study.
There
and
you
you
go.
said it too.
There you go.
And that's one of the things I'm hoping for. Is the goal of this is we do generate enough interest to get some state level, perhaps even federal level, obviously local level funding to look into these same studies. What effects does this operation or this method have on this beach or that beach? Every beach is different along the whole Texas coast, different morphology, different geology, different meteorology. So there's not a one solution, but you're on the right track. We need more money to look at it. There's a question right here.
Sir.
Yeah, can your organization with hotel motel tax money fund that, since it is something that directly affects tourists?
It's not currently under state law that something like that be funded through hotel tax, but I mean that's not something that couldn't be considered down the road.
Well, you can fund beach cleaning, correct?
Right, and that is regarded by under state law as a primary tourism piece that can be funded. That's state law that regulates that.
I have to go bring legislators.
Might take some of the state's hotel tax to do that. So since it's such a large issue that the General Land Office is involved and NOAA's involved too. They have their own set of hotel tax too. And they have 3 major coastal communities that generate a lot of tourism dollars that could stand that kind of study, for sure. Good point. Well, thank you again. I wish you the best of luck with the rest of your symposium, and do get out and enjoy our beaches too. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
John.